So back with this family, we've got Ray and Ruth, 65 and 62 years old. Got those 3 kids. Dan, we know, is the business there. Been there over 20 years now. And then we've got the other 2 kids off doing their own thing. Everything that mom and dad is own, what makes up their estate is about $4.5 million of assets. The business makes up the lion's share of their estate, and it's worth right at $3 million. As mom and dad start the discussion and start trying to brainstorm between each other, they realize that their most important goal is to keep the business in the family for the next generation, and hopefully for many more. So with that goal, once they have that goal, then they can start figuring out how they want to achieve it. So they have options of how they can try to do planning. The first option is the simple option. And here's they can just give an equal share of their assets to all of their children. Like I said, this is also the state's option if you don't have a plan. As you look at that, well, you know, it's equal, but is equal fair? Arguably, it's not. Now, I was working with a family down in Greenfield not too long ago, and it was a husband and wife, and they have a son that was very active in the business. The son couldn't make it to the meeting. And so it was me sitting there with husband and wife, and when I work with families, I like to try to get the ball rolling and help people to visualize how their business got to where it is. You know, so I started down the road of asking a question along the lines of, what has your son meant to the operation? Or where would your business be today if your son wasn't there? Now, I got about 3/4 of the question out of my mouth before I was interrupted. And husband and wife both chimed in at the exact same time. They said, we would have sold it. They said they would have sold the business a long time ago if their son wasn't there. It's just gotten too big and too much for them to manage. And so if their son wasn't around, they wouldn't even have the business anymore. But chances are, as you start that discussion, you go down the road and you think about it, the reason why the business is where it is the size that it is producing what it is, because of the efforts of that child. So is it fair for them to inherit that 1/3 and equal with the other kids? Arguably not. So there's other ways that you can go about it. Now another way, option 2 is go to the other extreme. And here, at death, you can favor one child over another. And, you know, so in this situation, mom and dad, they could give the entire business to their son, Dan, and nothing to their 2 kids. Now you're looking at that and you say, well, that's not anywhere close to being equal. Well, that's fine. There is nothing in the law that states you have to treat your kids equally. You have to give anything to your kids if you don't want to. Our buddy just down Interstate 80 here, Mr. Warren Buffett, said that at his death, his kids don't get anything. They don't get squat. It all goes to charity. These are your assets. Whatever you want to do with them, what you think is fair, you can do. So in this case, yeah, this works. But there's another option as well. And this is the one that I work most with here at Farm Bureau. And that's where we're going to try to do a combination of the 2 approaches. And we're going to add inside of mom and dad's will or inside of their trust. So they wrap it up all in their estate plan, an option for their son to buy out the business at their death. So once again, this allows them to set out the price and payment terms. So for this family, once mom and dad pass away, Dan will have nothing left to negotiate with the siblings. That's the powerful aspect of it. And so in this case, as mom and dad start designing their plan, they're thinking, well, we have $4.5 million of assets, 3 kids. Divide that by 3, that's $1.5 million per child. Well, if they say, okay, Dan can inherit $1.5 million of business assets, that just leaves $1.5 million left to buy out from his siblings. So they're going to state that in very specific terms that Dan, within so many days of death, you can buy out your siblings for $1.5 million. That's great. That there lays the legal foundation for Dan to buy that business when mom and dad pass away. However, you know, it sounds great, but it's only half the equation. To live up to Dan's end of the bargain, he has to come up with the money in order to make that possible. You know, if it's not a funded buy-sell, like we say, if it's unfunded, well, it's not really worth the paper that it's written on, is it? So Dan has options of his own. He needs to start looking at it. So if he has a buy-sell agreement stating that he can buy out his siblings for $1.5 million, well, how's he going to do that? He'd go to a bank, try to get a bank loan. Anyone's tried to get a bank loan since 2008. It's not the easiest anymore. Let's say that he qualifies for one, and he gets a 15-year payment period, and the interest rate on the business loan is 7%. That's over $160,000 a year for 15 years to pay off that loan and all the different costs. That leaves over $2.4 million. There's another option, but hate to burst your bubble, this doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a 0% interest loan. The government will impute interest, but let's say that we did live in that perfect world where this was allowed to happen. In that case, a 0% interest loan over 15 years is $100,000 a year for 15 years to pay it off. There's another option, another thing to consider. This is using life insurance to fund that buy-sell. Every family is different because life insurance is based on age and health and all those different things combined. But it's worth looking into. Now here's, in my private practice, what I try to do is get families to compare the options on an apples-to-apples basis. And so, life insurance might sound great, but if you don't compare it to anything, how are you to know? So here's an apples-to-apples approach here. This is a life insurance policy that's designed just like that bank loan that's on a 15-year schedule. It's a guaranteed policy that, based on mom and dad's age and health and those different things, it's guaranteed in that if Dan pays $24,700 a year, he's guaranteed that premium will never change. Over 15 years, he's guaranteed to never put any more than $370,500 in there. And he's guaranteed when mom and dad pass away, he gets the insurance tax-free that he can use to buy out his siblings. So when you look at it in that perspective, it's a great option. It's something that definitely Dan should think about. So you ask him what he would rather do, rather pay $370,000 or $2.4 million, and it's a no-brainer. So definitely something, a buy-sell agreement is getting you partway there. You have to finalize it and fund it as well. Now once again, the message is clear. A buy-sell agreement in and of itself is a great tool for the family. Eliminates surprise if you communicate it, but it just makes it so when mom and dad pass away, there's nothing left to be negotiated at all. And that's powerful.